Thanks everybody for coming out. My name is Representative Chaz Beasley, and I am one of the new co-chairs of the caucus that we are creating today, the Future Caucus. And this is a caucus that's been created in a few other states, about 20 across the country. And it's geared toward members of the General Assembly who are under the age of 45. And basically, our goal is to make sure that people who are on the younger side of the spectrum when it comes to what's going on here in the General Assembly not only are representative, but can get together in a bipartisan fashion and make sure that we're talking about issues that affect the future of our state. I'm very honored to have the support and work with Representative Kyle Hall, who will be speaking after me, as well as Senator Jay Chaudhuri and Senator Chad Barefoot. As we know, it's critical in this current time that we have more bipartisanship and that we're willing to work across the aisle. And we also know that it is tremendously important that people who are going to be the future of our state feel like they have ownership in what we're doing. So I really appreciate you all coming out. I appreciate all of our other members who have been willing to jump in and who understand the importance of this caucus. And so at this time, I'll turn it over to Representative Kyle Hall.
Morning. Thank you, Representative Beasley. I'm happy to be here to be a part of the new young caucus here at the General Assembly. Most of the things that we do at the General Assembly tend to be bipartisan in nature anyway. If you look at our voting records of everybody that's here that's an elected official, probably about 80% of what we vote on ends up getting a vote of 120 to nothing in the House and probably 50 to nothing in the Senate. There's only about 20% of the time that we actually disagree. And I think that one good thing about this caucus that we have established here is giving us that open dialogue. Chaz Beasley and I don't necessarily agree on every single issue that's in the General Assembly. As a conservative, I believe that our millennial generation expects to have the same promise that was envisioned to us by our founding fathers, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I believe that our millennials, the one issue that they're most concerned about in the future is the prospects of having a job. And that's the number one focus that we need to have in this caucus, is to make sure that North Carolina continues to grow stronger each and every day. And those are the issues that I will fight for on this caucus, along with Chaz Beasley and Senators Barefoot and Chaudhuri. And with that, I'll turn it over to Senator Chaudhuri.
Thank you all. My name is Jay Chaudhuri. I proudly represent parts of Raleigh, parts of Cary, and all of Morrisville. So just as a little bit of background, last year I had the opportunity to meet Stephen Olikara here at a conference where he actually suggested the idea of establishing a North Carolina Future Caucus. And as you may know, Stephen runs the Millennial Action Project out of Washington, D.C., a group that is dedicated to helping forge bipartisanship and cooperation among younger legislators to come up with common sense solutions. And that project has carried out similar efforts to what we see in North Carolina, as Representative Beasley has said, in 20 other states, and there's also a similar effort underway in Congress. So I'm excited about helping be a part of establishing this caucus. Now, I will confess to you that I am not a millennial. I'm a member of the Gen X generation, but there is a reason that I have a vested interest in making sure that we established the North Carolina Future Caucus. There are two reasons. First, there's the obvious demographic changes in North Carolina. Millennials are rapidly growing in the state. And this year, millennials will outnumber baby boomers for the first time, becoming the largest adult adult generation in North Carolina. And today, millennials constitute 1 out of every 4 voters in North Carolina. In a study that was done last year, Wake County was considered one of the top 10 national markets for millennial home buyers. And in my district, which is home to North Carolina State University, Peace College, and Meredith College, obviously there are many, many millennials that are here in the district. And second, reason that I thought it was important that we establish this caucus, that it is important that we come together to take on challenges facing the issues, confronting the issues that are important to our youngest citizens, citizens who will really define the course of the rest of the 21st century. And so I want to do whatever I can to make sure that we can proactively include the voices of millennials and have them be part of their conversation so that we can have a shared prosperity for this state today and a shared prosperity for this state in the future. And I think with that, we were waiting on Senator Barefoot, but are we going to make any comments, Stephen? I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much for everyone joining us today. Thank you to the many members and staffers who have joined us, and thank you to the leadership team of the North Carolina Future Caucus, Representatives Beasley, Hall, Senators Chaudhuri, and Barefoot. And a special thank you to Senator Chaudhuri for believing in us early on, for being a great friend, and for being our champion and being the catalyst to bring many members together here in North Carolina. So as mentioned, I'm Stephen Olikara. I'm the founder and president of the Millennial Action Project. And as Senator Chaudhuri mentioned, we've been launching these future caucuses all across the country, building a bipartisan movement of young lawmakers who are saying something very simple, that the founding creed of this country is one where out of many we become one. For all of our diversity, it's essential for the success of our democracy to be able to build consensus and common ground. But we're here today because we are confronted with a threat to our democracy, which is that partisan polarization is the worst it's been since the end of Reconstruction. And we have historic numbers of young people feeling disaffected from the political process. Indeed, a majority of millennials today do not believe that politics can solve the problems we face. Less than a third of millennials see public service as an appealing career track. But at the same time, we cannot forget the potential that this generation has to offer. We actually have the highest service participation rates in this country. And as we know, historically, great political transformation has been driven by young people. So there are two parts of this group that we're forming here. One aspect of it is we have serious challenges confronting young people that we have to address, whether it has to do with creating the economic opportunity, helping young people access education, dealing with the student debt crisis we have, being able to attract and retain young North Carolinians to the state. Today, we're actually not announcing an agenda, but these are the sorts of issues that caucuses across the country have worked on. And it's important for millennials, before they re-engage with the process, to know that the process is actually working for them. But the second piece here is even deeper than any single piece of legislation. And that is, can the youngest legislators here be the adults in the room? Can they model the type of civil discourse that we need? Can they build bridges of cooperation and mutual understanding? As Representative Hall mentioned, there are a lot of areas, maybe 20%, where legislators won't agree, and there's disagreement there. But the power of this group is to say, we can work together on other issues, and we can disagree constructively. That's what we need here, without demonizing and vilifying the other side. Because the more we do that, the further we move apart as a country, the more we focus only on the short-term crises, and the less we can actually address the long-term challenges that we face as a country. So today, the point is to bring together this group of legislators and to issue an invitation to the more than 2 million North Carolinians across the state to engage in this process, to submit their ideas to the legislators here, to be part of the coalition building here, and ultimately, we expect the caucus will come together around a few key pieces of legislation. Now, let me just say something about what's happening nationally. Now, the Millennial Action Project has over 300 young lawmakers who are part of this growing network. We have a group called the Congressional Future Caucus in the House of Representatives that has worked together on a variety of issues, ranging from entrepreneurship to the environment. And I think what's happening right now at this moment is a change in narrative. If the narrative has been cynicism, you can't make a difference in politics, why does my vote even matter? This is meant to be a change in that destructive narrative. For the people who don't believe you can get things done, for the people who think that the process isn't worthwhile, this is meant to be the change to that mindset. So I'll just close with this. James Madison talked about in the Federalist Papers the violence of faction. And he was very concerned, as George Washington and many others were, about the impact that extreme partisanship can have on our country, the tribalism that doesn't work for us and has never worked for us in this country. You know, George Washington said in his farewell address that extreme partisanship would lead to authoritarian tendencies and foreign corruption and influence, that these would be destructive aspects of our democracy. But what they also said, Washington and Madison, were that well-designed institutions and fresh thinking and leadership would be the keys to bringing our diversity together in a sense of common ground. And that's what we're trying to do here today. So the other thing that's worth mentioning, by the way, is that the founding fathers were young people, literally the same age of people standing behind me here today when they wrote the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson was 33. When they wrote the Constitution, James Madison was 36. So that is the power of young people in our democracy. So I'm extremely grateful for the leadership that we're seeing by the members standing behind me. I'm grateful to the entire Millennial Action Project team, especially Sharice Eatman, who's sitting here beside us, who has worked tirelessly to bring us all together here. So again, thank you to everyone for believing in this cause, for believing in this mission. This is just the beginning, and I'm excited to see what the North Carolina Future Caucus can accomplish together across party lines. Thank you.
I think with that, we'll take questions from the press.
How much of a focus is kind of recruitment of young people into a service atmosphere? You mentioned they have higher levels of service than the other generations in the United States, but less of an interest in public service, as it were, as far as elected office. So how much of the Future Caucus's effort is going to be put toward drawing millennials into the fold and getting them involved in public service, and what ways are you going to do that?
Sure, I can say a couple things, and maybe some of the other members can jump in.
So it's my belief that a prerequisite for millennials getting re-engaged in the political process, whether that's as an active citizen, voting, and ultimately perhaps running for office, is believing that the process works, believing that it can deliver impact and results on the issues that they care about. When we're stuck in this moment of dysfunction and partisanship, it's hard to make that case. So for us, we think millennials are actually not apathetic, which is, I know, the dominant narrative right now, but actually we're mistaking apathy for what is really a disaffection from the political process. So for us, I think this group is all about demonstrating that the process can work, that we can come together around some issues that matter to young people. We can model the type of leadership we want to see. And then I think there can be larger efforts that recruit young people to get involved. But I'll defer to others who want to comment on that.
I'll just say one thing quickly. We've talked about this issue briefly with the folks at the Millennial Action Project, but one idea is this notion of going to the millennials and going to college campuses and holding forums where you allow them to share their opinion, incorporating their opinion as to what ought to constitute our legislative priorities. And I think that all of us live in areas where I think we'll be able to do that. As I mentioned, I represent North Carolina State, Peace College and Meredith College, and I think there's a way for us as legislators to rethink the way that we are talking to millennials so that they aren't necessarily coming to visit us at this legislative building, but we're going to them on college campuses.
This question is for members. What are some areas that you all think that you can come together and build consensus around?
I think that Representative Beasley last week demonstrated part of that. One of those issues that he fought for in the budget last week was adding an amendment to the budget to require financial literacy to make sure that our young people are prepared for the future. But I think all in all, I think that we can come together, at least in my opinion, on some tax reform issues and some education issues to make sure that our classrooms are adequately funded, that our teachers are adequately paid for the challenges that they faced. I think also our public safety. I think that all of us up here understand that we have the same number of state troopers on the road today as we did in 1992. Obviously, North Carolina has grown tremendously since then, and I think that that's something that millennials should take very seriously because the state of North Carolina is just growing bigger and bigger each and every day, and we need to invest in our public safety sector.
And just to build off of what Representative Hall just said, I mean, one of the things that is particularly an issue that you hear from just about every single millennial that you talk to is about student loan debt, about the fact that you have to basically take out a mortgage on your education in order to get an education. Those are the types of things that hopefully we can draw attention to, that we can come up with solutions for, because so many people, rightly or wrongly, do believe that a lot of young people are not represented in spaces like this adequately, and that does lead to disaffection. That does lead to people feeling like there's no place for them here. But we do have quite a few young people in the General Assembly already, and hopefully, to the earlier question that was asked, one of the things that will happen is that as we bring more attention to the people who are already here, that will show that, you know, there is a space for younger people in the General Assembly, and that there is a need for younger people in the General Assembly, particularly on these issues that affect us disproportionately.
I'll just say on the Senate side, we've already seen some of the cooperation among the younger members of the Senate. So Senator Barefoot and I have worked together on an expanding computer science education bill. We have 18,000 jobs that are unfilled because we don't have enough graduates that know how to code. And that's an issue, I think, that goes to Representative Hall's point about looking at how we can create jobs. Those jobs pay $78,000 on average a year. So that is one area. And the other area, which has really been an area that Senator Barefoot has worked on and has been able to bring both Senator Jeff Jackson and I in helping him on an issue is early childhood education. And so, you know, when you think about the future caucus and you think about the future, you think about what kind of jobs we have in the future and what is our best return on investment now in the future, and that would be computer science education and early childhood education.
I know y'all are just starting off and you're just establishing yourselves as a caucus, but what are some of your goals going forward for perhaps the first 6 months to a year that you've been established?
So one of our biggest goals is to take advantage of the fact that we are wrapping up this session, and that will allow us to, number one, see what things weren't accomplished in this session that we could potentially jump in on, and also to take the time to really think through some of the issues that are particular to us. As you know, the short session, which will start in the late spring, early summer of next year, is really historically geared toward making tweaks and making fixes. And that's really what this caucus can do, is focus on things that haven't necessarily been accomplished yet, but could be accomplished. So I think one of our biggest goals is to talk about those things. Number two, it is to bring in more people into the into the space in the General Assembly, members and people who are stakeholders on the outside, to accomplish things and really get a strong core together so that when we start the short session next year, we'll be in good shape to actually get some things done.
So you all agree on 80% of the issues, but those 20% of issues that you all disagree on, those are really important issues to a lot of people on both sides. I mean, do you have, you talked about having constructive conversations on those issues that you disagree over. What do those conversations look like? Do you plan to have a different type of conversation about those issues than that you're having now? Like, what does that look like? I mean, can you come to some type of consensus over those 20% of issues? I'm talking immigration, tax reform, healthcare, those types of things.
So I think that when it comes to what Representative Hall was saying about the 80-20 rule, I think that he's correct. That is generally the case. But I also think it's important to remember that that 80-20 rule can not only apply across issues, but also within issues. For example, if the idea of tax reform was brought up, it may be that we disagree on how much, but we disagree on specific changes that are occurring. When it comes to student loan debt, for example, we may agree that that is an issue, but we may disagree on the approaches, and that's where we can actually build consensus, and that's where we can get together and hopefully use this caucus to be a successful vehicle for change. So a lot of times when it comes to negotiation, there are going to be sticking points. There are going to be certain things that you can't agree on, but if you can come to consensus about the things where you can potentially work out a deal, and also given the fact that deals involve some people having to make trade-offs, those are where we can really create the change that we need. So I'm a big believer in the fact that not only can we accomplish that, but also there may be things that we don't even see right now that could potentially come up as we build those relationships. Up here, relationships are critical, and oftentimes what I've found so far is that some of the ideas that we've been able to accomplish have come from having good conversation with people, from playing basketball over at Peace College, or from having dinner with folks. So those are hopefully the things that we can use within the Future Caucus to be a catalyst for the things we'd like to accomplish, particularly in the short session next year.
You know, one thing I will say in response to your question, which is a really good one, is I think we are all privy to conversations that take place in this building or over dinner or over some kind of athletic event where we are talking about those issues. I think the challenge for us is whether we can be more public about those conversations. You know, my sense would be, can we be more public about those conversations outside of this building? I think one of the things that the Millennial Action Project brings for us is what they have done in other states. So, for example, they have held similar summits, Future Caucus summits in Texas and Ohio, and can we have those conversations at a summit where we're willing to maybe agree to disagree, but at least be more public in having those civil disagreements on important issues?
Do you all know how many members are under 45?
I think there are about 15 members or so.
15.
Yeah.
And why was 45 the cutoff, Stephen? Or maybe-
Sure. Yeah, and we have different approaches from state to state. I think we chose 45 in this state because we wanted a critical mass of members. And in some states where there are more 30-somethings or 20-somethings, we can lower the age. But for us, we thought it was important for the citizens of North Carolina to see that there's actually a substantial group of folks. We wanted to extend it up to 45. And for us, it's not about having a strict millennial age definition for membership, but really more about the mindset and spirit. And as Senator Chaudhuri was mentioning, we all care about the future of the state, and some districts, including his, have a lot of young people in it, a lot of millennials. So I think it's important for us to be actually building our coalition as wide as it can, and not limiting people from getting involved.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.